Cool. So does it show that it's recording as well, guys?
It does.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. My name is Monica Rojas. I am the Membership and Inclusion Specialist at Tech Hub South Florida. And just I'm going to give you guys a quick overview before we get started with the presenter today for our Tech Talk. And this week's Tech Talk is going to be hosted by Alex Ortiz. He's the Director of Advancement in Sustainability at Child Rescue Coalition. And he will be teaching us more about keeping kids safe from predators using technology. So we're super excited about this, and we look forward to just all the information and resources that Alex will be sharing with us. Yeah, so for those of you guys who don't know, our mission as Tech Hub South Florida is to build South Florida to a tech hub. Yeah, so our name's really clever, I know. And we live by one community creed, and we try to just show it in our actions rather than just talking about it, but just being as inclusive and community first and people first as possible, and finding a way to welcome everybody, whether it's through tech talent, startup development, just tech communities in general. We really want to hear what you guys want to contribute, want to see from us as well. If you have any more questions, please just check out techhubsouthflorida.org. Right. So like I said, our mission is to build South Florida into a tech hub. So we are a nonprofit and we are membership driven. And at the moment, we have about 200 corporate companies across South Florida. So that includes Broward, Miami, Palm Beach, and even Martin County. And our purpose is really to foster our tech community and foster creativity and push for innovation. So by 2030, we can have this huge tech hub and just have a new economy down here in South Florida. So yeah, so these are just a few of our awesome members. We have Office Depot, we have Boca Code, we have UKG, Brick, and the one thing that our members really have in common is technology. So that's kind of what makes us inclusive. So as long as you're in any part of technology, you can go ahead and join our membership and even just be a part of whatever mission we're kind of pushing forward. And these are just a few of our membership updates and benefits. So we have weekly newsletters, we have customized member profiles, and we are releasing new member profiles soon. So just stay up to date. We have job listings and resume distributions. So we have a whole career board on our website. If you haven't seen that yet and you're looking for a job, please feel free to post your resume in there, see what some of the companies in South Florida are hiring for, and reach out to us if you have any additional questions for that. So we also offer speaking opportunities for Tech Hub and our partners throughout South Florida. We offer member spotlight, guest blogs, PR support, and social media mentions. And we have different peer groups within Tech Hub. So let's say if you wanted to join our CEO group and you're CEO in South Florida, you can go ahead and do that one. Startup founders, we have a women's group, tech leaders, and you can also see that on our website as well. So these are our weekly events that we have. And I mentioned to Alex earlier, we will be starting in-person tech talks again in May. So it's going to be all throughout South Florida. It's going to be Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca, and West Palm. That way our whole audience and on all of our members across South Florida can attend. So on Tuesdays, we always have, or every other Tuesday actually, we have community coffees where we kind of just bring in leaders of different topics to kind of discuss. Next week, we have our, it's our healthcare in 2050. So we're gonna bring all the healthcare leaders, health tech leaders in South Florida on a panel. And then we also do podcasts. So the Tuesdays that we don't have community coffees, we'll have podcasts and vice versa. And then Fridays we have lunch and learn. So they're about 60 minutes. It's a workshop, whether it's tech development, personal development, or startup development. We try to rotate that just to educate our community overall. So this was the resume distributor I was talking about. Just so you guys know, you guys can check out Tech Hub South Florida careers, submit your resume. You can check out different jobs. And if you are a company hiring, you can also post your jobs there too. So yeah, if you haven't done so already, please join our Slack channel here. And you can just email this number on the screen or just reach out to Nikki and I and we could add you to the Slack channel. So I realized that we didn't, Carrie, you joined last minute. So I want to give you a moment to kind of just introduce yourself and share a little bit more about Carrie Stamp, our sponsor for tonight.
Great, thanks, Monica. So my name is Carrie Stamp. I'm a financial advisor and I have a firm that's based here in South Florida, but we deal with clients all over the country. And Nikki, or I mean Monica, it's I do that all the time. I'm sorry, Monica.
Okay.
The thing that you mentioned a minute ago is education. And so part of the mantra of our firm is that I have 7 primary principles. Education is principle number 2. And so all of our team members in the financial planning industry get over 60 hours of continuing education. I've got one of my associates right now who often does this Tech Talk introduction that's on a CFP lecture, or Certified Financial Planner lecture right now. So if you want to learn more about how you can improve your financial situation, my best resource is my YouTube page. There's more than 80 videos where I have uploaded topics on financial planning issues. And you can learn the Reddit Robinhood lingo with one of my latest videos so that you can understand how you can get yourself some tendies and you can have diamond hands as an investor, but you definitely do not want to be the bag holder. So I'm Carrie Stamp, it's Carrie Stamp and Company, and we are financial planners, but we like to have a good time too. Thanks, Monica.
Awesome, Kara. I definitely have to check out your YouTube channel. I've been meaning to do that for a while. So thanks for reminding me. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over to Alex Ortiz, our special speaker for tonight. So Alex, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and kick off.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So can I already go ahead and share my screen?
Yep, you're good.
All right. Fantastic. So I will go ahead and do that. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Fantastic. So I'm going to keep myself time on task and start a timer here so we can stay to the 20 minutes and have time for Q&A. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak on behalf of Child Rescue Coalition about a topic that is extremely important, I think, just for society, but obviously very much for our mission in helping to keep kids safe from predators, and in this case, using technology in a way that is making a difference and making an impact around the world in a time that is extremely necessary. And throughout the presentation, if there's anything that you'd like to ask in a question, keep those questions to the end, and then we'll discuss that. Hopefully we'll have some interaction that we can go into. So to get started, I wanted to take a moment just to give you an idea of what the problem looks like, because this gives some foundation about where we are and where we need to go in helping to improve the way things are in terms of addressing the problem. So 300,000 is what is associated to the number of children that unfortunately are sexually abused annually in the United States. 150 is the amount in the billions of dollars that is generated globally by human trafficking and exploitation every single year. 1 in 4 and 1 in 6, this is the ratio of girls and boys that unfortunately are sexually abused or assaulted before the age of 18. 85% is the percent of online offenders that are also hands-on abusers of children. 5 is the number of children that die from abuse every single day globally. And this is one of the most staggering numbers, is 50 to 150 is the average number of children that are abused by a predator in that predator's lifetime. So if you can wrap your head around that in terms of what every single predator out there has the capability of doing in their lifetime in terms of exploitation and abuse, it's astronomical. So obviously when we consider what we've just gone through and still are going through to a certain degree and starting to get out of it, but during the pandemic, obviously both children and offenders have been forced to stay at home and spending more time online during this time, and the threat to children and sexual abuse and online exploitation through the distribution of child sexual abuse material, or CSAM, as it's known now, has certainly been on the uprise, and right now in particular focus around offenders that have been using this confinement time to increase children's vulnerability overall. And then another thing to think about is the surge that we've seen during COVID-19. And according to this June 19th from last year, this report called Offenders and Victims During COVID-19, we see that there's some distribution indicators that really are demonstrating this increase. And so referrals from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children have been on the uprise, and many of you know this. John Walsh is the kind of the face of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. If you see those things in Walmart and other stores where you see missing children, that's the kind of the clearinghouse for these kinds of incidents, the Amber Alert system, et cetera. The number of attempts to access online child sexual abuse materials has been increasing. The number of reports from the public to law enforcement about these incidents, the volume of new posts on online forums dedicated to CSAM compared to the same time in previous years is on the uprise. Obviously, activity on the dark or deep web forums. And then the area that is extremely relevant and connected to what we do is the activity on peer-to-peer file sharing networks. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. But this graph just gives you kind of an indication of what we had seen in terms of that surge. And this was during the initial period of time when the pandemic was sort of kicking off, and seeing how the effects of that confinement and spending more time online and what we saw specifically in peer-to-peer file sharing networks and the amount of trading of this and distribution of this material was looking like during that spike. So, we see that the solution is utilizing sort of fighting fire with fire. So using technology as a way of helping to address this problem. So Child Rescue Coalition, we see as a solution in providing or being a way to rescue children through from sexual abuse through this donor-funded technology that is provided to law enforcement to track, arrest, prosecute, and convict child predators. And so Child Rescue Coalition, as I mentioned earlier, is based in Boca Raton, and we're dedicated to protecting innocence through this technology for children around the world. And so obviously we as a nonprofit organization, we're obviously measured by impacts and results. So we have over 13,000 officers that have been trained in over 97 countries in all 50 states to utilize this technology that's being made available to law enforcement. So that technology sees anywhere from 30 to 50 million leads every single day. And when I talk about a lead, this is an incident of trading of child sexual abuse material. So think about that, 30 to 50 million leads every single day. Our system has seen over 71 million unique IP addresses that have been identified in the possession of some kind of child sexual abuse material across the globe. We actively monitor 9 of the most utilized peer-to-peer file sharing and chat-based networks that are used today. And so our impacts has been, we've helped law enforcement through this technology arrest over 13,000 predators worldwide, 3,000 children rescued. And so, to put this into perspective, on the arrest side, that's approximately 3 arrests per day globally through this technology, and 1 child every day and a half that's being rescued. Now, if you remember that number that we looked at before, the 50 to 150 children that will be exploited or abused by the average predator in their lifetime, and you take the number of arrests worldwide in that time that we became a nonprofit in 2013, this gives you this number of about 600,000 plus abuse cases that have been prevented as a result of the technology that's being used by law enforcement. So obviously this is something that has tremendous impact and has usefulness and is relevant in the world that we live in. So obviously it's hard to really wrap your head around what this looks like unless you have a chance to really see this in real time. So I'm going to stop sharing here for a second, and then I'm going to come back, and hopefully you'll see my screen again. And so this, what you're seeing on your screen, obviously you see a map here, and I'm going to click on start. When I click on start, you're going to start seeing a series of dots that are going to populate this map. What you're seeing, this is actually a real-time representation of those 9 peer-to-peer file sharing networks that the technology is monitoring and providing this information to law enforcement of the trading of child sexual abuse materials. So those dots and the colors of the dots represent one of those 9 networks. So you see red, you see green, blue, and it'll keep on building and building and building. So that is just showing a sort of a cluster in that area of the world as we are speaking, where this kind of trading is occurring of this material that has been identified to fall into category of what's known as prepubescent child sexual abuse material. So this is not an ambiguous category of individuals that might be of age or not be of age. These are children that typically are 12 years of age or under, because it's predicated on a child having reached developmental age. So there's no question that the individual that has been identified through their IP address in these systems knew what they were doing in terms of the trading of that material. So it constitutes a felony regardless of where that individual is in the world. And that was very important for this technology to be useful and to be effective, is that the baseline had to be at that point where no matter where that person was in the world, it was a felony. So this actually, I actually did this just before this presentation. I ran this same exercise, so you can see a fully rendered map, and that's what it looks like, and you can see where the clusters of this activity are more prominent in the world. So let me stop sharing, go back to the presentation. So obviously it's always important to talk about some notable child protection system success stories, just so you can see where the technology is having a real impact, even locally. Some of the things that have happened in recent past, this was just something that happened within the last 2 years, was a gymnastics instructor in Boca Raton at Twisters Gymnastics, that the technology was able to identify this person that was providing coaching services for this local business, and was able to identify them hopefully before they were able to have any physical interaction with a child of an abuse or an exploitative nature. So obviously very relevant. This was in Fort Lauderdale, if you see Calvary Christian Academy. So this was actually an IT instructor that was also identified. And obviously it's important to understand that obviously somebody in that role has the ability to navigate internet tools, and still the technology was able to identify this person and have them be arrested through this technology. This was actually a janitor that was up in Jupiter at ELB's Autism Foundation. So obviously direct access to children, disabled children, et cetera. So also identified this individual. This was a report of a daycare owner down in Miami that was also identified through the technology. So obviously somebody that is in a position of trust, that was providing services to children, and so obviously access to those. This was something that happened late last year, or in the middle of last year. These were employees at Disney. There were 16 total arrests there. So obviously through a sting operation and Child Rescue Coalition technology played a role in being able to identify these individuals. And this was actually just recently, I think it was in the month of February. And this is a notable case. This was actually in North Carolina, but what was notable about this case was that this was an individual that had been caught previously, had served some time, came out, and then was caught again, and now is going to be serving a 25-year sentence, also through the technology. So obviously this is something that, I could go, for an hour in terms of the amount of incidents like this that we see all the time. So one of the things that I really wanted to discuss here is how is this relevant in the ever-changing landscape that we live in, and especially as we start adopting even more utilization of technology in our everyday life, like in on-demand gig economy, sharing economy services that we all rely so heavily on, and how we see the ability for our technology to play a vital role in enhancing trust and safety as more and more of these companies come online and organizations look for ways of extending their ability to address the need for more trust and safety. So how can you do that beyond what is typically associated with, doing an ID verification or looking at arrest records or sex offender screening or social media to determine if somebody that is being hired is of trust to have that kind of role with the organization. So, we've seen that it's typically a snapshot of today, but what about tomorrow? How do you know if somebody is still somebody of trust? And so that's really where our technology can play a vital role, because now you have information that goes beyond just a sex offenders registry or an arrest record, which is historical, but you might have somebody that's involved in the trading of child sexual abuse material who is in effect flying under the radar, but still is somebody that should be identified by law enforcement, because this might be identifying them before they've had the opportunity to physically engage with the child. So it hopefully is able to identify them earlier in that life cycle, because we know that a lot of this is behavioral. It increments in terms of that individual's being more bold in taking more risks, because they are sort of encouraged by their ability to kind of get away with it. And so if we're able to use this technology in those spaces where people are being put through a background check, and at that point they have more data, this is where it plays a real important role. And so how does this work with companies? So as you're thinking about how technology like this could be really powerful, embedding this data technology with these companies would be in this way, as an authenticated user visits some sort of marketplace or some platform or online tool presence, every IP address could be used to authenticate that member, and that information is being captured. That member's IP address is checked against the child protection system data to identify those risk indicators. And one example could be the timing when that occurred. So the approximation of when we saw in our system that activity for child sexual abuse material, and we might have seen that same IP address appearing within one of these closed networks, and being able to see what the correlation between those two are, seeing what that member's risk score, and update that every time that IP address is matched and identified, and then looking at those members whose risk score might exceed a predefined threshold. And those can be reviewed, they can be blocked, or they can be flagged for law enforcement action. And so obviously there are very specific outcomes that are associated here, is that we can help to detect bad actors earlier in the life cycle. We can improve trust and safety. We can reduce obviously the risk of litigation, because obviously, any business out there has insurance, has as a way of kind of reducing some of those things. So any trust and safety activities like this can help to reduce the exposure to those risks. And then obviously, the underlying mission here is protecting children from exploitation. So obviously those things are things for you to kind of consider and think about, is how technology like this can really be powerful. And we all have relationships with companies and others that might say, hey, you know what, this is the time for us to start considering how we can do this. And don't think just about marketplaces. Think about school systems. Think about how now with the educational technology tools that are being used even more as a result of COVID and the pandemic, how those closed networks that are collecting this kind of data matched against Child Rescue Coalition data could be tremendously powerful in being able to identify individuals, and nobody is exempt from this. Parents, students, teachers, administrators can all be in the same level playing field, where technology like this can be, actively addressing this at an earlier stage. So the last thing I just wanted to talk about is the fact that, obviously we are a nonprofit, and we became a nonprofit primarily because we knew that the most effective way that we were going to get this technology in the hands of the users, law enforcement, was by making it free and becoming donor funded, and not limiting law enforcement agencies around the world by things like budget restrictions or price, where it's always being made available to law enforcement. But we have, as a nonprofit, we pursue all the traditional ways of connecting with supporters out there to help support us. So we depend on contributors. So we have that, and I'm providing some links here where you can donate to Child Rescue Coalition. As little as $25 can go to protect another child. You can stay connected with us. We know that social media and posting and sharing is extremely important. We have a tremendously powerful following of young professionals or young students that are helping to use their voice in the social impact climate that we live in. Subscribing to our newsletter, connecting on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter, thanking your local law enforcement, for the services that they provide, and educating yourself. And you can go to childrescuecoalition.org/education to learn more. Now I'm about a minute left, but maybe we can open up to questions and answers now. That concludes my presentation. So I'd love anybody to ask any question.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Alex. I personally learned a lot. I'm not really that educated in this field, but I feel like it's super important, especially if you're not, you kind of feel like a bystander, So if anybody has any questions, just feel free to take yourself off of mute, or just go ahead and drop it in the chat, whatever you feel more comfortable with. I know I have a few questions myself, so I can start off with that unless no one has a question right now. So how long is the life cycle of the trusted safety technology that you're mentioning in the slide? I think it was like three slides back.
Now, when you say life cycle, what do you mean? What is the life cycle?
Kind of just like the turnover rate. Like I know there's like 4 different steps of identifying, like how long does that take for you guys to identify?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, so when we work with a marketplace, we typically do this in 24-hour batches. So we can do 24-hour matching exercises with the IP addresses that company organization is collecting on their server logs, and then so we do that constantly. So in terms of timing, the life cycle can be pretty immediate, and that's really an important thing to keep in mind, is that the child protection system, or CPS service that is being provided as a law enforcement, allows for law enforcement to do a search within their jurisdiction, and they can prioritize, or they can organize the information by, let's say, by the IP address that has the most associated incidents of child sexual abuse material trading within a specific period of time. But what's really important is that when we work with marketplaces and matching directly with IP addresses within a closed network like that, now it allows for even better and more relevant information, because now in the background, they could be using, let's say, a username, although we don't know the username, but they can have a way of matching on the background a username or user account to an IP address. And then over time, because obviously we know that IP addresses are dynamic and different IP addresses are being utilized possibly by the same user. So over time, our system can do what's called, obviously, IP address linking. So we can link different IP addresses to maybe the same user account over a span of time. And obviously that data is really important, because then law enforcement can use this as a way of understanding when was the last time that this individual was connected to this. And then they can do some more investigative work to say, well, if it was in this closed network, for instance, let's say if it was an Uber or Lyft or one of the on-demand caregiving services that we know, that's obviously, that elevates that target to a higher priority, because now they know that this individual potentially could be in a position of trust because of the work that they do, or a teacher or a coach. Now they have something beyond that immediately can make them act a lot quicker, and hopefully, that would also allow them to maybe get a search warrant a lot faster so that they can do their investigative work and hopefully, gain the knowledge to know if this individual was that person that was effectively involved in this activity.
Gotcha. Okay. So, just another question based on what you were saying. So basically the technology that is already used can be used again.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, because again, it's constantly there monitoring for those incidents.
Okay.
And that's why I like to give the example of school systems. That's one of the things that is extremely, part of my passion, is how we can really extend the usefulness of this technology beyond
that kids use. Like my son loves to play on Minecraft, and given the COVID situation, we've had to put rules in place that he cannot chat with anyone he doesn't know in real life. Like and he's made some friends, but he's very limited in what he can do with those friends because we've never met them in real life. So just curious, if you know of any technologies, or there's anything that your organization is doing to kind of address, those tools that are being used by both children and adults, and in order to protect the children that are using those platforms.
Yeah, no, that's a really very good question, because those are areas that we are in active discussions, and I can't go into specific which ones, but you could probably imagine the ones that are out there in terms of apps that are most commonly being used and that we hear constantly that are being used for that purpose, or as a secondary purpose for connecting unfortunately with children. And then obviously online video games in general is an area that obviously we are tracking as an area that to expand potentially our ability to get into those areas, because we see especially as a result of the pandemic, where that has attracted a lot of predatory activity, and especially even in the human trafficking arena, where obviously during the pandemic, where traditional trafficking was happening more kind of in the real world, where kind of the grooming activities were happening more real world, we're kind of transitioning to utilize things like online video games or apps as a place for kind of connecting with kids and using it as a platform for grooming. So absolutely, for sure. And one company that I would definitely also kind of give a shout out that we're kind of partnered with is a company called Bark. And they're a very powerful technology that does social media monitoring technology, which basically monitors social media apps, the most common ones out there, for signs of maybe child sexual abuse material trading, things like active shooter or depression, suicide, anything that's around protection of children. So, we work with them and kind of side by side, because they're kind of addressing in a different way, same topic, but in a different way, they're going around that. We made a decision right from the beginning that we wanted to start out our area as being peer-to-peer file sharing, because this is still today, it's still the area where we see, and in working with law enforcement, where the majority of this is happening even today.
Thank you. I'm actually on Bark's website right now, so.
Great, wonderful.
Sharing that. So we do have two questions in the chat. I know we have about 10 minutes left here, so we're good. So Nikki asked, has CRC been looking into or already using facial recognition software?
We as an organization have not, but we do have working with other companies, actually potential partnerships with companies that do focus exclusively on facial recognition technology. in trying to kind of marry or work together with facial recognition software companies. Because again, that's not a technology that we are specifically skilled in, but we can provide tremendous power in terms of just the data that can be linked with this other source in terms of the facial recognition. One thing that we are in the process of doing, especially this month, which is National Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month, is encouraging, and we've done this on our social media channel, is about encouraging people to look at pictures, because there's a lot of times that are in child sexual abuse material that is being traded. There are kind of very identifiable things that are being shown in these. Maybe it's a piece of clothing or a toy that child might have that we're asking people, hey, have you seen this? Is this something that you recognize? And if you do, reach out, use this number to report this. So that's definitely something that we're looking to gain more traction around those things, because they're happening more commonly. And obviously because of what we do, and we're connecting with this huge database of identified child sexual abuse material, there's ways that we can connect that information in a way where people can kind of get involved in that way.
Right. That's
Okay,
it.
I do have one question I asked in the chat before. I mentioned that I played Pokemon Go, and the term that I use to describe a Pokemon's power is CP, which means combat power.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's being described as as child porn. But if I use it in a chat to get everyone on board to start a raid or something, it could be mistaken as a red flag. Could there be any method? Do you know if there's any method that you could use artificial intelligence to distinguish between this kind of term versus the term that associates with child abuse?
That's a great point that you bring up, because one of the things that we've been trying to do, and actually later on this month, we're going to be putting out there a petition in terms of changing the kind of the lexicon around CP and child pornography as being a term that is an incorrect way of addressing this, because when you talk about child pornography, there is a presumption by using that term that the child somehow had a choice in the matter, that they were a willing participant in this. And obviously we know that that's not the case, right? There's so many ways of showing that this is something that is, it is basically, it's rape. It's being coerced and exploited into this. But to your point, and what we're trying to get the lexicon to be changed is the term that I used before is CSAM, or child sexual abuse material, which is a more accurate representation of that. So we're trying to get that petition put out there. But to your point about using some sort of artificial intelligence, we haven't specifically as an organization been looking at artificial intelligence around that, kind of making that distinction. But I'm sure that there is probably technology out there in that AI realm that could be used to kind of filter that out. And we hope that will, kind of take hold, because, if it was up to us, we would love that term, both CP and child pornography or child porn to be completely eradicated. The problem is that it's still being used a lot, even in the law enforcement community, and in the legal profession, not because they want to, but because on the books in terms of legislation hasn't changed that yet, so that it's being erased from there. And we hope that, what our petition will do, we'll try to get, legislators to kind of wake up and say, we need to change this, because, we see this today, even times when you see on our website, when we're reporting on news, the news outlets still are using, that incorrect terminology. So people at large still believe that this is, a correct way of addressing this, when in fact it's not. But thank you very much for that.
No problem.
And I just saw that Ryan just asked the question, where can we find the petition? So on June 20th is when we're going to be kind of officially launching this petition around this effort. So stay tuned for this. You'll see more about that. You can go to our website and at childrescuecoalition.org/news is where you can get more information about all the things that are happening with Child Rescue Coalition. So I'm certain that around that date you will get more information.
Awesome.
Well,
Alex, I did have a question as well. And thank you for answering my previous question. But just with the pandemic and a lot of the students, staying home and doing virtual learning, the parents being home, did you see like a really high influx of just content, and I guess cases rise during it? And do you expect that to fall once we get back to whatever our new normal is, or to continue to be on the higher level?
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw what that slide that I presented and showed. Obviously, that showed kind of the spike of what we saw specifically in the area of peer-to-peer file sharing in terms of how much of the trading of the material that we saw during that time. Obviously, there's always going to be fluctuations, and whatever this new normal is going to be, our belief is that is still going to show that the activity in this arena is going to increase, because I think no matter what happens, the fact that the embracing of more virtual is a reality, and not only just schools but just people at large, companies that see their ability in operating effectively in a place where more of their workforce are working virtually. Obviously, that provides more opportunity for people at large to engage in this kind of activity, right? And so by that rationale, we do believe that there is going to be kind of that increase of that. But time will tell, and we'll continue to monitor this to see how that kind of plays out.
And I was assuming too, like on that the live map that you showed, because there was a lot of areas on that map there that didn't have a lot of the red dots. I'm assuming that's because those are areas that don't have Wi-Fi access or whatever. But as it's kind of almost like a catch-22, because as like communities like ours, a lot of organizations across the country are trying to get a lot of these underserved or underprivileged areas Wi-Fi access. It's kind of like it opens up opportunities for business to make money and economics on the positive side. But I'm assuming that as more communities get Wi-Fi access, that also creates more predators for you guys as well, right?
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, that is a very good point about what you were able to glean from that map, is that it does represent the areas of the world where access to high-speed internet and Wi-Fi is more prevalent. But keep in mind that obviously that map represents just those 9 networks that we're monitoring. That is not a full view of everything that is happening in the world of child sexual abuse material trading, just in those 9 networks. And we focus on those 9 because working with law enforcement, these are the 9 networks that over time have been shown to be the ones that are attracting the most activity. And it's important to understand that these 9 networks aren't just exclusively for the trading of child sexual abuse material. This is for any peer-to-peer file sharing, whether it's pirated movies, pirated music, software, even grooming materials, because we see that a lot, and we're able to monitor that in our system is documents that are being traded amongst predators, giving them guidelines and giving them tips on how to get closer to children and how to groom children. So all of these things are being addressed within those. So that's the key thing to keep in mind, is that we're laser focused within these networks of just looking at information that's relevant to the trading of CSAM exclusively, and all the other information, all the other trading that's occurring, while could be deemed as illegal. That's not our area of focus. We're focused just exclusively in that specific area.
And Monica, and I had one more question. I just don't want to take up all the time here too.
Oh, this is great. I mean, I feel like
Unless somebody has another question, you can go first.
I wanted to ask, I think James mentioned artificial intelligence. It sounds to me, Alex, that you have a volume of data that is extremely great. So it sounds like, I don't know, you said that you're not doing any artificial intelligence, but to me, it looks like this would be a great tool in your bag of tools that would help in predicting and matching, creating profile for some of these. Talking about machine learning, even to combat these predatory behaviors. Is that something that you guys are thinking of in doing in the future, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with having access to this kind of data, you know, it really the sky's the limit in terms of being able to partner with another organization that might be able to kind of tie those things together. One of the areas that we'd love to get, you know, is connected with, you know, academia and data scientists that also, you know, can look at this from a kind of just from a pure research perspective, from a kind of behavioral analysis, you know, where the correlations, even in the you know, the healthcare arena in mental health or behavior analysis, and kind of coming up with, like you said, a profile and saying, you know, there are habits that, you know, using this data can help to understand what that progression might be from the moment somebody has that initial interest, you know, in children, to the moment that they're actually trading material, to the point where, you know, now they've taken that next stage of, you know, where in that life cycle do they take the jump into potentially physically connecting with a child, or then physically being in the presence of a child. So obviously that there is that. So I mean, yeah, there's definitely applications to go further in that progression.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like you can catch monitoring way before things get to the point of that.
Yeah, and that was the thing with that number that I talked about. 85% of those that have been identified as online abusers being also hands-on abusers. That's really where it's critical, because if you think about that, if we're able to identify them, you know, at that percentage level, meaning 85% of those that ultimately become hands-on abusers are also online abusers. If we're doing our job with our technology, think about if we can address 85% of those individuals right up front before they've had the opportunity to actually physically engage with a child. That's powerful.
No, that's incommensurable.
Yeah. But go ahead, Elizabeth, you had a question as well?
No, I think you answered my question. Maybe it was somebody else.
Yeah, I think it was Nikki, actually.
Oh, was Nikki? Okay.
Yeah, no, actually, Derry, you kind of asked my question, because that was kind of along the track of where my mind was going, was that I assumed you can't really like arrest somebody before doing something, but kind of along the same lines is like, I'm sure that you could probably tell when somebody's about to do something or track those people that are. I just didn't know kind of what's your capability where you're literally watching somebody and saying, okay, we know that this person is probably going to be somebody that does commit a crime, but can you really do anything before they, you know, get in contact with a child or commit a crime? Can you really do anything?
Minority Report.
And the quick answer is can you? Yes. Is there enough law enforcement out there with enough resources to be able to address this huge problem? Probably the answer right now is no, because there's so much of this activity that, you know, even in our system, when a law enforcement officer is using the tool, you know, they are viewing information that is relevant to their jurisdiction and their jurisdiction only. And typically they are looking at it from a top-down perspective, where they're saying, show me the worst IPs and I'm going to start from there. Typically they're not getting down very far into that list before something new pops up and they're kind of going back to the top. And that's really where the importance of working with marketplaces, because then it can become sort of a bottom-up approach, because you might have an individual that has only been seen maybe once or twice, you know, their IP address is only seen once or twice, but because it's linked with, let's say, a marketplace, that individual might have been shown to have a some kind of work that allows them to be in a position of trust. Well, now that could have immediately skyrocketed that person to the top of the list. And now they are somebody that might not ordinarily had been seen by that law enforcement officer, because normally they would be at the bottom of the list, but now it brought them to the top. So working with those organizations can be super, super powerful in getting some of these individuals identified where normally they might not be.
That's really interesting. You guys are doing some awesome work. I'm sure we probably could talk about it for another hour, but it's really cool.
Thank you.
All right, well, it looks like we're a little bit over time, but that's totally okay. Alex, you did an amazing job, and thank you for your like 34-minute Q&A. That was much appreciated, and we're gonna go ahead and just close it out for tonight, and we will be sending a recording to all the participants and everyone who didn't make it, and then Alex will send this over to you beforehand so you can review. But yeah, thank you so much. Alex, we'll definitely see you in the future. Please count on Tech Hub South Florida to support you in however way we can. And if you guys have any additional questions, I'll make sure to include Alex's email in the follow-up. So
Thank you so much. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Alex.
thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Be well. Thanks to everybody for
Have a great
joining.
night,
Appreciate
everybody.
it. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.